get started here. These are some of the contact details, and what I'm hoping to accomplish today is to give you a very quick, rapid-fire overview. There's all kinds of more in-depth summaries of the major announcements on the web, but then actually I want to open up things and hear from the audience about specific marketer applications of some of this technology. But one of the ways I want to start is give just a brief overview of what we're doing. We are a media brand that's focused on human creativity and artificial intelligence, because not only is it kind of the cutting edge of where the new stuff's coming from, but media has always been the canary in the coal mine for how technology impacts the entire economy. This is my 6th internet, to kind of date myself. We look at how our creative professionals in media and entertainment, marketing and PR, eventually HR and corporate communications, learning how to operate AI and improve their craft across storytelling, technology, and audiences. And what we aim to do is give them the practical skills and the critical thinking to integrate AI into their craft and their organizations, because that's more or less what O'Reilly Publishing did for the technology industry when the internet first came out. So this is a picture from Monday that I also sent to my children. And to encapsulate what I saw as the real change, I have a 24-year-old and a 27-year-old, and they are in their early career. And so I wrote them both as their father, but as somebody who went to the dev conference. And I think it should give sort of an attitude of where I'm coming from as far as where I see AI. And so I said, dear Cheyenne and Alex, based on what I saw Monday at OpenAI Dev Day, I'm encouraging you as strong as humanly possible to learn how to prompt and operate large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, and Midjourney as a distinct professional skill. Because the technology, the internet, the smartphones you grew up with, they're obsolete. So trust me, the world has changed. I know that you're both tech-savvy digital natives. Well, I was a tech-savvy digital native in the early 90s, and in a single year, the web browser made much of my technical education obsolete. I had to pivot. Both of you must now pivot and learn new skills, or you will be obsolete. And so subscribe to the latest versions of ChatGPT and Claude, and basically start prompting, and not only start prompting, but get good at it. And that way you're going to have a bit more control over your creative destiny. Otherwise, be a consumer and depend on the tender mercies of the tech industry. And so I don't know your individual goals or desires. That's not my business, but I will tell you straight up, no chaser, and loving truth as your father, that whatever you plan to do in your professional career, it's going to involve AI one way or another. So learn how to use AI, or AI will use you. There's not much middle ground. So you're both smart and driven and ethical, and that is actually a huge asset in this new world. But now is definitely not the time to make assumptions about the future based on the technology you know today. This week, OpenAI murdered 1,000 startups. So ping me if you're interested in learning more. I've got some great training material, but I'm pushing all my chips into the center of the table. Either I'm going to succeed spectacularly, or I'll end up driving an Uber to pay off the debt. So more or less, that's where I'm coming from as far as embracing AI and integrating it into my craft. And so with that, these are just some of the basic stats that we're seeing. 100 million weekly users of the OpenAI systems. And to give some perspective, it took internet approximately 7 years from the web browser to get 100 million total users. That was like 1998, 1999, when the internet had 100 million users, people who had used the internet. OpenAI is having 100 million every week. They got about 2 million developers who are building apps. Now, lots of times you need to discount these developer numbers very heavily, because there are a lot of people who sign up to be a developer and they don't do anything. But even then, even if you whack at that number hard, there's still a lot of people developing for OpenAI, and you have high utilization rate by the enterprises who count. So these are the key updates, and I'm not going to read through them so much as to give you an idea that they were basically working on two vectors to update ChatGPT. And I call it the head side of the coin. Is they did several things that are going to make you more productive. They updated the knowledge graph to April 2023. There's much tighter control over what the output is. I know that everyone started with kind of looking at large language models, say, oh, what do I get? And it was a bit like pulling the crank on a slot machine. And when you went from testing it out to trying to do something with it, it became much more of an issue. But now they're able to let you export the seed of your prompt, which is more or less kind of a style sheet for the for the model, and get more consistent results. And following in the footsteps of Adobe and Google, OpenAI is going to shield you from copyright. We'll see how that works out in the actual practice. When someone says, "Hey, I'm getting sued for $12 million," then we'll find out just how serious that claim is. At the same time, they're also making it much cheaper. There's a big difference between us as individual creators who are getting onto the system and someone who's running like a large ad agency or a large media studio that needs to basically have a lot of people working simultaneously. And so what they did was reduce the input token cost to like a penny for 1,000 input tokens, and then 3 cents for output tokens. And that's on the productivity side. These are things that we expect to sort of harden the overall system. But they're also giving you the ability to be more creative with a bigger context window, roughly the equivalent of 300 pages of PDF text. You also have these new modalities to where you can be in the same session, but you can be calling on DALL-E 3 for images, Whisper for text-to-speech transcription, but also for multiple languages. And then one thing we're going to drill into here are the customized GPTs, and then the assistant AI, the assistant API, which is where you can start to integrate an assistant into a larger system that you might be building. Now, that's on the head side of the coin. On the tail side of the coin, what's going to happen is that you're going to have to do a lot more monitoring, and you're going to incur some new risks. It is a contradiction in terms to change the rules of the game, but keep the same strategy for winning the game. And so when you're starting to take this dive into it, you have to look at, well, okay, there's work that I'm saving, but new work is cropping up. And that's where I have to start looking at the compliance for data privacy. In Europe, it's a GDPR. You've got the California privacy regs. There's also the quality control, and that depends on what you're doing. If I'm running a game or I'm, doing some kind of quiz to where the cost of failure is fairly low, well, then the gap, the aperture of what I want for quality is going to be wider. At the same time, while I was in San Francisco, I met someone who is working in the Department of Defense artificial intelligence policy, office. Being DoD, they've got a name a mile long, but the bottom line is that their job is to help bring AI into the DoD, and their quality control has a whole different meaning than if I'm putting out a game. Same thing going with intellectual property, as you saw with the Hollywood strikes with the writers and the and the actors. AI is front and center, and to speak personally, I'm actually quite glad that they brought it out of the back rooms and onto the street. There's a whole session, there's a whole conference just on AI and IP. So I'm not going to drill deeply into intellectual property, but it is a huge area that you're going to have to monitor. And then also brand integrity, because as you give your audiences or your customer bases more ability to manipulate information that's going to help their experience, at the same time, how do you keep your brand consistent, and most importantly, how do you keep your brand from being misused or even sabotaged? And that comes into some of the risks that you're going to have to start dealing with. A big one is going to be mitigating bias and ensuring diversity. For better or worse, AI has learned what the internet has to teach. And if you take one look at that, that's, we've scraped the internet, which is a bit like scraping a swimming pool. There's some microorganisms in that water. And so you're going to be incurring this risk to where you're going to have to take a proactive approach to understanding how is bias created, how is it detected, how is it mitigated. Trying to eliminate bias, and this is my personal opinion, is a bit like trying to eliminate credit card fraud. Getting it to zero just isn't going to happen. You have to mitigate. You're not going to eliminate. But one of the best ways to mitigate is to ensure more diversity. Diversity is one of those things to where it's not just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do. Because the diversity of the viewpoints that are coming into your model are actually going to reflect the audiences that you need to reach and are going to be strengthening your model. And that brings back to the content accuracy, which is sort of the obverse of quality control. And then finally, you're going to have to balance, where do you lean heavily on human talent and where can you start to work with AI? Because looking at it as an answer machine, that's a recipe for disaster. So let's get to some use cases and then let's open things up. These are just a few that I started knocking around. One is to use GPT for some AI-driven personalization. I'm sure there's been some great use cases quoted over the last few days. There's also this idea that we can brand a GPT, okay? And maybe I've used the wrong word about skin, because it's not just particular look and feel. They've got a pretty standard interface, and so you can change some colors here and there. But also the bigger point is that you can start to incorporate the domain knowledge in your GPT that's going to give a branded experience. Because on the one hand, if let's say I'm checking airline flights and I'm saying, hey, GPT, tell me next United flight going out of SFO, and can I get on it because I have XYZ kind of membership. That GPT going to the general model, from a trust point of view, I would be more skeptical of the output. I would try to verify the output. However, if I'm using a GPT that is United Airlines GPT, and it gives me that type of voice interface that I'm accustomed to, that can be a very good thing. And that leads to number 3, which is the multimodal and multilingual content and the experiences. Hey, GPT, I got to get to SFO. Give me a map. Hey, GPT, I'm a driver, and the rider in my back seat doesn't speak English. Can you translate this, whatever that I need for fares on the road or things like that? So I can build it once, but I can make it accessible to the masses regardless of the language. Another set of use cases would be tailor the GPT to generate content with a consistent brand voice. We've spent untold amounts of money trying to come up with visual branding and color palettes and fonts and all of this type of material that's related to publishing, print publishing, that is. Well, now we're literally into voices, sonic identities, catchphrases, kind of the Netflix tone, which, by the way, let me recommend a fantastic podcast called 20,000 Hertz. Again, I'll say the title, 20,000 Hertz, HERTZ, and it explores some of the most unique sounds. It could be the T-Mobile, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. It could be the Netflix tone that announces a movie. These are going to become increasingly critical for working best with some of these GPTs. And so also for customer engagement, I don't have to funnel everyone through the one. That can have a GPT that is optimized and tuned towards selling the product to somebody, but then have a similar branded GPT, which is going to be tuned and focused more on supporting the customer after they've bought the product. And so there's all kinds of touch points at different stages of the journey or relationship where GPT can come into play. And then finally, looking at SEO and sentiment, you can utilize a GPT to surface kind of the non-obvious keywords and phrases that are going to drive traffic, and then use it to extract insights from your media or customer feedback. So these are the kind of takeaways, and this is the future. I don't look longer than 12 months ahead. One thing Sam Altman said was that when they had the next developer day, which would be next November 2024, everything that we saw, which blew our minds, is probably going to look quaint. So as far as like deciding the starting point, well, the starting gun has happened. So get real. Proof of concept is going to waste your time because you're still kicking around. You're going to have to choose a project that has some legit stakes to it, because the decision making that you learn in doing these types of projects, that's what you're going to need to scale these projects. So get real. Launch a real project for legit stakes, and just basically move on. Another thing too is to get ready with your own content. One of the best things about using your own content is, number one, you're still sidestepping the IP issue because hey, it's your content, but more importantly, the IP still hasn't shaken out. But equally, if not more important, because it's your content, you already know what quality output's going to be like. To be honest, like yesterday, I made a GPT as a sports nutrition calculator for an athlete who wants to compete. In this case, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu athlete, because that's my tribe. They're going to compete in 90 days. So what should they be eating on a Mediterranean diet over the next 90 days that's going to help them lose weight and be ready to compete? Now, GPT made me a really fantastic kind of meal planner and tell me about calories and all that stuff. But to tell the truth, I'm not a pro. So I took that output and I gave it to a professional trainer that I know, someone who's actually does the stuff, to quality check it for me. Because to tell the truth, that was not my content. I don't really know sports nutrition that well. But if you're in your domain, I heartily recommend that you do your real experiment with your real content, because you'll sidestep IP and you'll already know what quality should look like. And the main thing is, this is a messy process. So stop just chasing tools. You will lose that race. Trying to say, I've got to master Midjourney, and that's like someone saying, I'm a writer, illustrator, composer, and visual artist. Maybe a few of those individuals have existed through time, Leonardo da Vinci, but you're going to have to really focus on, what am I really fluent at, that I really do well, that I feel confident in, and I can improve with AI. And then where do I need to get literate to where I can work with other people? Comes down to that old saw that if you're a smart person, you can see what's smart about the next person. If you're secretly paranoid that you're dumb, you're going to look at everyone around you as being dumber. So stop chasing the tools and analysis and start doing. That's going to be the best way to get behind this. So this is where we are at Culture and Code. And right now, I'd like